And I guess we could get started now. It does say 12 o'clock on my iPhone, but I know people will keep coming in. But I will say hello from Yellow Springs, Ohio, where I live, and also from Miami University, where I work. Um, so it's great to be here. I work as the associate director for Dragonfly, if I haven't met some of you. Um, but like I started to say earlier, we're just excited to have this time to talk about careers because I think with Dragonfly, we have a lot of altruistic people who want to make the world a better place. And that is wonderful, but there's nothing wrong with also being a little self-serving and figuring out what career is actually workable for your life. And so I think using this master's program, or if you're an alumni thinking about the next bit of time and situating yourself with the skills you need to get to that career that's going to be both fulfilling and also hopefully logistically work in terms of money. It's not always possible and it can be challenging, especially in the environmental fields, as you all know. So this is being recorded and we'll be sharing it out as well. But let me just hand it over to you, Danielle, to get this going. And the last thing I'll just say is the chat can be our friend. Feel free to pop in with any questions there. And we're not a huge group right now, so also feel free to come off mute if you want to ask a question during the presentation.
All right, thank you. Good morning or afternoon, evening. I know we're coming from a lot of different time zones right now. As Kevin said, my name is Danielle Hart-Westbay. I am one of the career advisors at Miami's Center for Career Exploration and Success. I work with graduate students in particular, so all graduate students across all programs, which obviously includes Project Dragonfly students. Can everybody see my PowerPoint okay? Okay, want to make sure that's sending. So I want to go over some of the resources that I think may be useful for graduate students in particular, for students who are virtual, because I do realize a lot of you are not in Ohio, how that might be utilized. But if you have any questions, feel free to throw them in the chat because this is casual, you know, I don't need to lecture if you have any questions. So definitely want this to be a conversation. Okay, so we'll get started. All right, so you may have seen this already, but here's some data on just outcomes from alumni who have participated in the Project Dragonfly program. So about 75% of students reported that they felt the program offered them some sort of professional advancement, which is amazing. We want to increase that to be even higher if possible. It is something that a lot of grad students and especially a lot of virtual students don't realize is that the resources at the Career Center are absolutely for you too. They are available. We are here for you. We want to help support these skills and experiences that are going to get you to the place you want to be after graduation. So the Career Center does have a physical location. So if you do happen to be in the area, you are more than welcome to stop by and see us. We're located at Armstrong Student Center. However, if you're not in the Oxford area, that's also fine. We do offer a lot of, if you're going to make an appointment, we offer phone call appointments. We offer virtual appointments on Handshake's version of Zoom. And we can do a lot of different things. We can really try to work with you, you know, to be able to access your advising appointments. So these times that were available are in Eastern time, but keep in mind if there's ever like, you know, if you're in a group that's putting on an event in what would be like the evening here, we can absolutely work with you and try to, you know, get you presentations and things like that. So we really want to help you as much as we can. So the first thing I want to go over is just one-on-one advising appointments. This is not the only thing that we offer, but this is probably one of the most common things. I see the question is drop-in available virtually. At the moment, not right now, because our drop-ins are with our peer career coaches. So these are undergraduate students who are working there. So we don't offer virtual appointments with them at the moment. Having said that, you should be able to find plenty of availability between me and the other career advisors. So you can schedule appointments even just like one day before. So, you know, something we might think about in the future, though, is trying to increase those virtual options with our PCCs. And if you ever choose to make an appointment with us, there's really no limit to what we could talk about. So even if you're kind of like, I know what I like to study, I know what I like to do, but I don't really know how to apply that to a career. We can talk about that. We can talk about if you have a great idea of what you want to do and you're applying for something, but you need help finding opportunities or you need help working on your application materials, whether that's resume, CV. You can do any of that. We can talk about that. If you want to move on to a PhD program, we can talk about applying for that. So really the opportunities, you know, whatever it is that you have questions about, you know, we can, if I can't answer it, then hopefully we'll find you someone who can. I want to emphasize as well, and this is kind of a trend across you know, all different employers, but there is a survey that the National Association of Colleges and Employers conducts every year. And we have seen this trend over the past couple of years that many of the respondents to the survey are focusing on what we might call like soft skills. So these are skills like communication, teamwork, problem solving, things like that, as you can see. These are usually the most important things that employers are looking for. And I want to emphasize that your degree program can absolutely set you up to establish these skills. And the Career Center can help you to talk about these skills in a way that you're not selling yourself short, which I know a lot of people want to do. So we emphasize that your degree program is a great foundation for learning these skills, learning that like, you know, specific industry or field, you know, know-how that you might need. But there are a lot of other ways that you can communicate these. So we want you to keep in mind also work experiences you've had, volunteering you've had. These are kind of a complete picture of how we can, you know, work to make you the best candidate possible for these opportunities. So when you first try to access our resources at the Career Center, you may notice that we have things organized by what we call career clusters. So these are just broad industry groupings, and I'll show you how to select these on Handshake in a minute. But they're basically like trying to make our messaging more relevant to you, because we don't want you to have, you know, messaging for law and government if that's not your interest, you know. So I imagine a lot of you would be attracted to the health and science cluster perhaps, or the education, nonprofit, and human services maybe. But you can select as many or as few as you want when you go into Handshake for the first time. And this really, like, it's like Netflix. The more information you give it, the more you personalize it a little. This just allows us to, you know, better serve you. If you ever get messaging from employers on Handshake and you're like, why are they advertising this to me? I don't have this kind of background. You'll find that if you do kind of fill out your profile a little more, this tends to reduce that a little bit. So in order to find Handshake, you'll go onto My Miami. It's listed as a job internship database, but it is more than just that. They just unfortunately selected that as the title on My Miami. But it's really your one-stop way of connecting with us at the Career Center. So you already should have an account as a Miami student. You just need to activate it if you haven't before. And I want to emphasize Handshake is for everyone, including grad students, including students who are not in the Oxford area. And when you first log on, you're going to maybe look at your profile and see this page, which looks scary. This is just how I was saying. We want a little more information so we know how to better serve you, how to give you information that's going to be more relevant to you. So career interest, it's going to ask you for career clusters, which ones you prefer. So remember, some of the ones we just looked at, those might be the ones appealing to you. They might not be, but definitely look through them. It'll also ask for industries you might be interested in working in, and finally job functions, which is the type of work you would like to do. So to kind of distinguish those two, you might be a teacher, but you might be working in a school, you might be working in a museum setting. There are a lot of different ways you can teach, for instance, and that's more the function versus the industry. So you can play around with different filters, and that'll sometimes give you new opportunities that you might not have thought of before. But that's just what all of this is, because I know that can be a little intimidating when you first log on to there. So if you ever want to schedule an advising appointment with us, so that would also be through Handshake. When you get to the landing page here, and if you ever want to make an appointment with me or one of our other advisors, we have a very large team, you'll select appointments, schedule a new appointment, and then we just want a little information on what you want to talk about. So it's pretty self-explanatory, but let's say you want to talk about your interview skills, you want to talk about a resume you're working on, you're applying for a job and you want some feedback on your application materials, whatever it might be. We are more than happy to talk about that. And then we'll ask you to choose either a 30 or 60-minute appointment based on general type of advice. So as a graduate student career advisor, since I advise all grad students, you can schedule with me that way. If you're on campus and you would like to, oh, that does say virtually. Well, maybe we do have that now. You can meet with the PCC. We also have a global career development advisor who, Alexis Andrews, who is focusing on either international students who want to work in the US or domestic students who are interested in working internationally. So we have a lot of different advisors with different specialties. So, pick the one that you feel like is most related to what you would like to discuss.
And Danielle, I just want to jump in because you
Mhm.
said PCC, and I think I saw there, what is it, peer career coach?
Peer career coach, yes, sorry.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah, a lot of acronyms. I am sorry about that.
Well, we're all about that as well.
When I first started this job, I was like, I feel like it took me a week just to learn all the different, acronyms for everything. All right. So the next thing you would select after the type of appointment, you would select the particular advisor you want to work with, and then the medium. So if you want to meet virtually, for instance, that's going to be on Handshake. They actually have their own kind of version of Zoom, basically. Or you could do a phone call if that works better for you. Right. So three main functions of Handshake again. So the first one's kind of connecting with us, with your career advisors. You can also check out our events that way. So you can RSVP to them, or if they are virtual events, it's all going to be through Handshake. Sometimes we have virtual career fairs. So you'll sign up for like slots with different employers. These can be like group appointments where you just kind of ask the employer what they're about. You get to know them a little more. Sometimes there'll be one-on-one meetings. You can kind of practice your elevator pitch. We'll also have virtual events for kind of a variety of things. Sometimes ones we've had in the past have been like alumni panels, chatting to people who have gone through certain programs, employer Q&As that are not tied to the career fair, departmental events. So a lot of really cool stuff going on there. And again, you can find that all through Handshake. You can sort by virtual or in person. You can sort by career cluster, anything happening recently. A lot of different ways to kind of access those events, and highly encourage you to RSVP in advance just so we kind of can get a head count for some of these. And finally, so I know three main things. So again, connecting with us, seeing our events, and finally, Handshake functions as a job and internship board. So similar to LinkedIn or Indeed, people will post, employers will post opportunities on there that you can apply for. Highly recommend this, honestly, because for Handshake, everything's kind of vetted by the Career Center. They are very targeted toward college students, grad students, and recent grads, just because that's kind of the age group that primarily uses Handshake. So you may find less of those ones like that are like, we want, a billion years of experience. you can really filter by any of those terms I talked about earlier. So you can look at things based on career cluster, industry, internship versus job, play around with the filters, see if you can find some different opportunities. And they're not located only in Ohio. So we have all sorts of, nationwide and even international opportunities on here. And in some cases, the employer will allow you to actually apply directly through Handshake, which is really handy. And that was an unintentional pun, but it really handy. And you can attach your resume to your profile. It makes it a very, very quick process. I just briefly looked up some jobs and internships I thought might potentially be interesting to the people in this audience. And I tried to get it from a few different locations as well, because I know, again, not everybody's local, but we have, jobs in Cincinnati, California. Some of these are remote. And then I also looked up some internships, and you can see there's a similar diversity in terms of location, type of work. So I encourage you to check it out. You can bookmark things for later if you want to revisit them. You can also set up search alerts so you don't have to kind of go trawling through Handshake every single day. Anytime somebody mentions a certain term, you can get that sent directly to your inbox.
Danielle, do you mind sharing what search terms did you use for these results?
Yes, I think I used conservation or environmental or something like that for one. And then I think I used zoology for another term. I don't remember exactly what, but I think those were the two terms I used. So
Right.
they were pretty broad, honestly.
I don't know if it handles like kind of like Boolean search terms where you can like say like environmental or ecology, because one job may have environmental in the name and another might have ecology, or the same with like education. It might be like education versus like interpretation, and you don't want to miss the interpreter jobs that are essentially education. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on it.
From my experience, not too great with the Boolean search terms, but that's why I say mixing up the keywords you use, and also looking into, again, that distinction between function, job function, and industry can be really useful. That can, and you'll have two very similar companies or employers who are describing the same job in different ways too. Just kind of the way that works sometimes. So by diversifying your keywords or combinations of keywords, you can sometimes get a lot more than, I have sometimes students who are psychology majors and they'll just type in psychology and they're like, nothing's coming up. And I'm like, well, psychology isn't really a job, but maybe think about like the type of work you would like to do. So sometimes it does involve a little bit of like research into what, are the key terms people tend to use in your industry or industries you're exploring. And we have a few resources for doing that research that I can show you.
And there's also like a global or national search geographically versus like within 50 miles or 100 miles of your place. I know some of you are likely, you're not open to moving just anywhere. Obviously, if you can, that's great. It will open a lot of possibilities. And the other thing that I think I did when I was searching for jobs was there were some search terms I set up, and then some geographic things I did. And then there were also a number of institutions that I was just like, I would love to work with this institution. So I'm going to manually go to their job board. Miami University, for example, has a job board where you can just see every job coming out of Miami. And then I would because I was like, this would be a perfect place for me to work. So let me just see what's available. Maybe it's something I would have never thought to search myself, So anyway, just some ideas there.
Yeah, and that's a great idea. And I would encourage you to, when you are on Handshake, if you see like, ooh, California Department of Forestry, I'd love to work there. You can click on that and see everything they're hiring for. But yeah, there are other job boards too that may work better for you based on your interest. If you want to get into like higher ed, for instance, higheredjobs.com is a good one. But I would, try to diversify that search just because that's going to be the way to find the most opportunities. I honestly have a lot of students who use ones that are more general, like Glassdoor or Indeed or things like that, and they don't find a lot, or they find some more scammy type of jobs. So do your sort of due diligence when you're looking at these. I think Handshake tends to be one of the most reliable ones. So that's usually why I kind of advocate for it a lot. Yeah, does anybody have any questions so far? So one of the things I also wanted to bring your attention to is the fact that we offer grants for unpaid or what we call underpaid opportunities. So if you have an internship and it's across the country and you need help with your moving costs, for instance, or you're not getting paid at all for this internship, we do have grants you could apply for. They are competitive. But a lot of students do end up getting, some money to kind of mitigate those costs. And you can find more information, either the QR code there or our website. I got a question. Are career services available to us after you graduate? So we have everything, including appointments, and our online resources available for up to a year after graduation. So we do work with alumni. Past that point, we will generally refer you to alumni services for additional assistance. Yeah, great question. All right. And speaking of doing some research on employers, that's, on Handshake, like I said, if you click on an employer or search one of them, you can actually get a little bit of information on the company. They will sometimes have employers you can speak to. So they'll have their Handshake, representative on there. They'll have students who have previously worked there, who have given like reviews of working there. What was it like to work there? And you can ask questions to them and stuff. It's a great way to network with people. Question, any tips for later in life career changing search? I think for a lot of students, if they are, and I see this a lot more with grad students in particular, being open and kind of deliberate about that career change. So, for instance, usually in a resume, I would say, don't put an objective because people usually know what your objective is by applying. When I have seen it more effectively work is for people who are having kind of a massive career change, very different program, that can sometimes clarify your intentions there. But in terms of like navigating the job search, really just the same suggestions I would give to anyone at any stage of their career. Doing that research, being well versed in what they're looking for, and then kind of tailoring your application materials so that you are addressing their questions and what they're looking for, if that makes sense. Any other questions before I move on? Okay, so as I said, on Handshake, you can complete your profile. And again, this just allows us to give you a little bit more relevant messaging. You can actually, if you have a LinkedIn profile, it looks very similar to that. You can add your work experiences, educational experiences, etc. You can take, a professional headshot and include that. And all of this will help you, again, if you're applying to jobs directly through Handshake, it's going to be easy because you don't have to fill out as much stuff, which I realize can be a lot of work when you're applying to a lot of jobs at the same time. It just gives you, a little bit of a leg up there. And you can also attach your resume to there. And that again makes it easy to kind of have everything, ready for that. Although I would recommend still tailoring cover letters to the job you're applying for. So you do need to do a little bit of work for each one because you want to show them that you mean it, and you know what you're applying for. But this does kind of help you have a little bit of that set already.
I will say for people applying for different jobs at Dragonfly, one of the number one things we look for is any indication that they actually like know what we are about, right? Like it could be just like one sentence at the start or end. And you'd be amazed how much like 80% or more that don't bother. It's just a form cover letter, and that is the difference. So I know it takes more time, like Danielle's saying, it's easier to just churn out same cover letters to 30 places. But if you really want that job and you're like, this is the perfect job, definitely cater it.
100%. I've chaired a search committee before, and the ones that move forward to the next stage are the ones that I can actually tell read the job description. Definitely something you want to do. I would honestly suggest, like, if you have a job you're really interested in, going in and highlighting everything that looks relevant. And then making sure to show that you have those things they're looking for in your application materials. Question, how long do we have access to Handshake after graduation? I believe that's the same as the rest of our resources, so up to a year after you graduate. All right, and this is just some instructions for attaching that resume onto there. And for some people, having more than one resume might be useful if you're applying to, let's say you're going into maybe 2 different industries you're interested in and you're not sure which one. They might have different conventions, like what they're looking for in a resume. Yeah, go ahead.
Since we also, I know we have a few alumni on here who might be like, well, if I'm more than a year, and Connie, you might want to chime in here because we've talked about alumni services also being a resource for those that are further out from graduation. And we are actively kind of trying to connect more with that group. Connie, do you have any other information on how we can maintain support, some level of support for people, even if they're more than a year out?
So hi, everybody. Nice to see you all. So the alumni office used to have a program called ACE, which was Alumni Career and Education Development. And it seems to be something that has taken a back seat. I tried to search for our May grads. I tried to find information on that to share with that population, and I wasn't able to find it. And so Kevin and the graduate school and I have been in touch with JJ Slager out of that office about communications to alumni. And so, Kevin, this would be a great question, I think, to connect with him on, because I was just thinking, Danielle, also, in fact, I started to type it in the chat. With access to Handshake and the services your office offers in that first year out, with alumni soon no longer retaining access to their Miami emails, will they still be able to access it? Is there going to be a different way that they'll enter the system? Are you able to speak to that yet?
Honestly, I am not sure how long they're going to maintain their Miami emails after graduation. If you happen to know that, my hope is that it would be at least a year so they can continue to log on that way. If that's not the case, we're definitely, gonna have to
current alumni will lose it in April. And I think, so if anyone in this group will graduate, say in December, my understanding, well, they'll go to April too, but let's say May grads, I think that they're going to have it somewhere in the 30 to 45 days after graduation. And then at that point it disappears.
Okay. Yeah, I see the question in the chat. We used to, all students used to have their email address forever. Miami very, very recently changed this. So I think we're all kind of trying to figure out what that's going to look like. I don't honestly have that information for how we're going to, still offer services for students. I would hope we would still have some sort of method though, because we really do want to make sure you are supported at least for as long as we can. I'll also add that we have a ton of resources on our website that are accessible to anyone, anywhere, that you don't need to log on to access. I'll put in the chat here our website. So definitely feel free to look at that, and a lot of those resources, and like I said, anybody can look at. I see a raised hand. Is that a question?
Yeah, maybe I should clarify. I think everybody in the Dragonfly program completes a course on biology and technology, and we develop a website, or it may have moved into being like a story map. I'm not sure. I developed a website, but it's tied to our Miami Google account, and of course, that's the sort of thing you want to put on a resume. And now I'm hearing that's not something to put on a resume.
Yeah, and Lindsay, well, I think you can, in most cases, you can transfer the email associated with that. So hopefully that'll be a possibility, and we'll look into all that. But yeah, unfortunately, and this was not a Dragonfly decision, and I would sort of say it's Miami's fault, but it's not really Miami's fault either. It's more just the cost of maintaining this at some levels. But I think we're going to have solutions and a workaround for it all to retain all of that for you all. So thanks for bearing with that.
Yeah, that's exactly right. We learned it apparently was costing Miami about $250,000 a year to maintain alumni email addresses and access to that Google suite. And IT, Miami Central IT shared that a relatively small percent, maybe about 10% or slightly less of alumni actually continue to utilize these credentials, and they just didn't feel that they could justify in this kind of budgetary climate. They didn't feel like they could justify that kind of expenditure for a relatively small number. But as I wrote in the chat, we're going to be communicating both with IT and with the alumni office and putting together some how-tos for existing alumni and all of our soon-to-be alumni on how to transfer documents, like Kevin was saying. We've talked about even how we will structure assignments, you know, as we move into this new way of being, so that from the get-go, you'll have some idea of how to make sure you can retain information and access it after graduation.
Any other questions related to that or anything else we've gone over so far? I unfortunately can't speak too much to the departmental response to that, but I assume CCES as well is looking into some ways to maintain that access for you. Okay. If no other questions, I'll just briefly go over just a few of the other resources we offer. If you are working on a resume, we have a program called VMOC, which offers basically instant feedback. I'm sure you've heard of AI being used to kind of filter through resumes when you're applying to jobs, which is unfortunate and unfair, I realize, but this can kind of help you prepare for that reality. It will look based on, you can select like the industry you're trying to get into, and it will compare your resume to other ones in the system to kind of demonstrate like maybe you need to work on your formatting here or increase your action verbs. Definitely good to have a human look at it as well, and we're happy to do so, but it's a good, especially if you're, you know, up at 3 a.m. working on your resume, you can utilize that any time of day. For that, Handshake has an app as well. I think I should have moved that slide a little earlier, but if you're ever looking for jobs in line at Starbucks or something, you can absolutely use that. Some of the other resources we offer, I think I've been over all of these except for the focus 2. So we have a few, I guess I would call them assessments to figure out career fields that may be interesting to you based on how you answer certain questions about skills you have or work-life balance. It kind of looks at a variety of dimensions of work. I would assume a lot of people being in this program already have a pretty good idea of field or fields that they might be interested in, but this can allow you to do some additional research on fields as well. It'll give you information about, you know, how to get ahead in your applications in certain fields, what they're looking for in a resume, for instance. So it can be super useful in that way too. I think Big Interview is the only one I haven't gone over on here. This is an online interview prep website. So you can, they have a lot of videos you can watch just to learn about interviewing skills. But in addition to that, you can actually select question sets. So you might select, you know, the top 10 questions normally asked in an interview, or I want to go into zookeeping. What are some questions that are frequently asked in that kind of interview? And record yourself responding to them. And that way, especially if you're going to be doing a lot of Zoom interviewing, it's really, really great practice. They have a lot of really cool features on there too. In terms of networking, which is extremely important in a lot of fields, also want to point your attention to Miami Alumni Connect, which is very similar to LinkedIn, but it's exclusively for Miami alumni and Miami students. And this one, I believe you don't need a Miami email to, you know, do that. So you can do that pretty much forever. You can sort by people who have been in similar programs or who are in fields you might be interested in. And everybody on there signed up to kind of offer this mentorship to students. So they want to help. You're not bothering them. You can ask them questions about the industry, what it was like to work there, what it was like to apply to those positions. And people are usually pretty good about getting back to students. Parker Dewey is another good one for not only making connections, but finding what we call like micro internships or gigs. They're like small projects you do for a company. They're almost always paid. So it might be like, build us a website, we'll give you $300, it'll take a week, you know, whatever it might be. And that can be a cool way to get some additional experience on your resume. All right, so that is the end of my presentation, but does anybody have any questions either about what we looked at or about careers in general?
I just want to say, you know, it's great you give that foundational, like thinking about what you want to do. And that is the hardest part, right? It's like, what do you really want to do? And a lot of times I do hear people say, you know, I want to do something, I want to work outside, or I want to work with animals, or I want to work with kids. And you can have that desire. The reality of finding the position that does that in a way that works is tricky as well. So and we also have a lot of teachers in this program who want to switch gears, work more in the zoo or botanical garden world, and we have the other side too that want to switch to the others, and both will kind of share the pros and cons of their respective careers. The grass is always greener, if you will. But anyway, I see we're getting some questions, perhaps.
Yeah, the question was if anybody has any advice on applying for federal jobs. And I said, you know, any of our advisors can help with that. But Michael Swain in particular is our liaison to the law and government cluster, so might be a good resource. I would also check out usajobs.gov if you're wanting. I know it is. It is very hard to navigate. We can help guide you through it. They do have some funky resume conventions as well that they're looking for. We have some guides for that because I know, like, the first time I looked at it, I was like, what is this even? But unfortunately, that's how a lot of those government jobs are promoted, and applying through there is kind of the norm for that. So definitely feel free to make an appointment with one of us and we can try to kind of navigate through that a little bit. Something else I wanted to say, which I think was in line with what we were saying, is like I think most people who are in grad programs have that level of like passion for what they're studying, and that's amazing. And being able to figure out how to utilize that passion is kind of that next step sometimes. Like I was in a grad program at Miami too, and I was like, well, I love what I'm doing, but I don't know how to apply that to anything else after. So if that's kind of the stage you feel like you're in, that I can definitely relate, and we're here to kind of help you guide you through that process.
You said something earlier, Danielle, about not underselling yourselves, and I see that all the time when I look over resumes and CVs from Dragonfly graduates and students. Is like they won't like might not have included, you know, that you had this amazing travel experience where you went 10 days to Namibia and worked with the Cheetah Conservation Fund, or you know, it may not even be readily apparent that you did this awesome sort of zoo-based graduate program that's rather unique, right? Like not many employers have probably seen that, where that you did a community engagement lab, you did all the soft skills that it takes to engage with your community. And it's just like my son now, he's applying for college and he has to write an essay about, you know, it's like a time you overcame something. And he's like, I don't know what to write. And in my mind, because I see him, I'm like, can think of 15 things he could write about. But sometimes you need someone else to help you see, you know, what you've done that our minds sometimes discount or don't highlight as much as we should. So that's why this is so important.
Yeah, I could probably count on one hand the number of times I've had students oversell themselves. In the entire time I worked there, that usually does not happen. I'll have people like omit things because they're like, well, it was a volunteer experience, so it doesn't count. Like, yes, it counts. It's related, you know. Really think about however you can demonstrate the skills they're looking for, you know, and that could be in a lot of different ways. And there's a question here. What are some of the better paying positions people go into after graduating? I don't know if Kevin or Connie, that might be something you would know a little bit more in terms of the pay ranges.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, the reality is education and environmental is not hugely, is not the best paying fields, right? But I think, yeah, probably government, in my experience, government jobs do, if you can get and navigate those crazy websites and make it through that process, they tend to be, 6 figures and up in many cases. But otherwise, I think it's a lot of passion you're going for and trying to make sure you don't have a glass ceiling above you. A lot of positions in these nonprofit fields you enter, and that's kind of it. There's not much. So I think thinking about how can I make sure, and certainly having a master's is probably one of the main things that can break that ceiling in many cases and make you, it possible for you to apply for like director level positions or manager types supervisors that's going to lead you up the pay scale.
Yeah, and also be a good question to ask if you're networking with somebody on LinkedIn or Alumni Connect, just what they're finding to be the case in their industries as well.
The other thing is, we've had people in this program who work more in corporate, like their work is more in a corporate field, but their passion is still environmental or sustainability issues. So they work within a division there, or maybe that is even a side project, and they're fine with that, or they're okay with that as a life direction. So if money is really important to you, you might consider, going for something where your everyday work is going to be not in that, but you can still find ways to scratch that itch.
Danielle, I have a question for you. I'm just wondering if you're seeing a shift in when jobs list a salary range. It seems like for a while nobody did, and my son was job searching, and he's like, "Mom, how do I even know if I can live on this?" And I know there's been a lot of discussion about how that also creates inequity and it is problematic in that respect. I've just wondered if, from where you sit in that area, if you're seeing a change there.
I mean, personally, I'm a huge proponent for, listing those salary ranges. I think it was California that made it mandatory. And I know some companies are trying to get kind of a loophole and just list this super wide range. But I do feel like we've been seeing it more lately. I don't have any specific numbers on that, but I think it's absolutely something that, companies should be doing. And it's okay to ask those questions as well and be informed on what you should be paid for different types of work. So in the chat, I linked to ONET, which is a not affiliated with Miami, but it's a database where you can look up salary ranges for different jobs in different locations. So you can look at what is a corporate sustainability person make in Kansas versus California, and it might be different, and that can really inform you, so you learn more about, like, if somebody's asking you about a desired salary range, you have that information on hand.
And consulting is a whole different world. I mean, in terms of even what you would charge hourly, it's what at least I would think my hourly rate, what I've been told is take what you think it's worth and then like double or triple it. And a lot of these places, depending on what you're doing, will not bat an eye. Of course, getting into that world is a huge, endeavor in itself. I don't know if, Danielle, you guys help people like becoming, consultants, essentially. That seems like it's its own area.
I mean, we could definitely, if you're kind of, working on developing yourself or marketing yourself, that is absolutely something we can help with. I think we probably don't see that as frequently, but by no means do I think that would be unsuitable for a topic if you want to come in for an advising appointment, and we can kind of think of some techniques and how to get that started.
One of the things we've talked about with these career conversation, our nascent program here, is possibly having a panel inviting some of our alumni who are in established careers who can come speak directly to students who might have an interest in working in a zoo education program, for example. So I wanted to see if people felt like speaking, what you all, like if you think about your wish list, your where I'd like to be list, what kinds of jobs are you hoping to move into?
For me, I'm looking at conservation departments at zoos, which can be tricky because you're either looking at a keeper position that are taking care of maybe recovery species, which obviously might be tricky financially. And then it just goes to like director. There's not a lot of in between, which I'm finding challenging just because as far as qualifications go. I feel like more than at the keeper level, but not quite at director level. So finding that mid-range so I can get to that eventual point is I'm finding quite challenging.
Getting your foot in the door with zoos is a challenge. I think it's almost everyone I know had to start with an internship or a very low paid position and then slowly built up.
Yeah, I'm already an education
Okay.
curator at a zoo.
Right.
It's just that kind of departmental shift and kind of getting just that in between management position that's not quite director. Not many conservation departments are large enough, I feel like, that have that many spaces in between.
And why not go for the director? Just curious.
Because I'm very good about feeling like if I'm not 100% qualified, I trip myself up for sure.
Right. Well, I asked that because I keep wondering when we're going to have our first Dragonfly graduate CEO of a major zoo in the country. We have a lot of affiliated people with the program, but I think a lot of folks don't necessarily have that aspiration, which is lovely because it's like like a lot of our folks, I feel like sometimes want to keep their feet on the ground and keep working with people and don't see that level in their future. But maybe we should, maybe we should consider that more. I don't know.
Lindsay, do you have your hand up?
Yeah, this is kind of a logistics question. Like a lot of us are maybe in our last semester or last year, and then a lot of us also work and have all kinds of other stuff going on. Like I also have a kid applying to college. And do you have a recommendation? I'm sort of overwhelmed. Do you have a recommendation about like actually time management for, I've heard to, apply for jobs right, you actually need to treat that like a job, but that's a little difficult when you have like 2 jobs. So I just wondered if you had a recommendation or would sort of like meeting with the Career Center every other week, or I don't know, ideas for ways to stay on track.
Yeah, no, that is a great question. I realize a lot of people, especially in the Dragonfly program, are working or have other responsibilities. And it is true that applying for jobs is time consuming. So I would recommend, at least this is something that works for me personally. And if you find like meeting weekly would keep you on track, that is something we could do, or bi-weekly or something. I find organization to be kind of my biggest time saver. So I am a big spreadsheet person. So every single like opportunity I'm looking for, I'll put that all on a spreadsheet with the deadlines, what kind of application materials are required, do I need any references, et cetera, et cetera. And that way I just have it all in one place. If you're finding opportunities, like if you're applying to some on LinkedIn and some on Handshake, it can get overwhelming when, you might not have remembered which one's which. And then just, even ranking them on your spreadsheet in terms of like which ones are most urgent or which ones are kind of your top priority. And I realize that, can be, not everybody's mind works that way, and your mileage may vary with that, but I do find having some sort of organizational system can be a really good way to stay on track. Don't know if anybody else has any advice from, job searches they've been on previously, or what you found to be useful.
I think I probably applied to about 15 positions when I finished with my PhD, and was very disheartening experience. It was like 2008. So the economy was just tanking. And, I think it takes a little time to get over rejection or no response. And it was the next year that I felt, by necessity, because my wife and I were having our first child, and I was like, I kind of have to do this. I have to put myself out there again. And so I just started doing that. And I was a little more, at that point, I was a little more focused and able to find, based on that first experience, like, okay, this one's not really what I want. So yeah, keep chipping away at it, and yeah, you'll get there.
Yeah, I had a very, very similar experience post PhD. Because it was right during the pandemic, applied to like 30 jobs and just not hearing anything back is very discouraging. But be kind to yourself too. I know that sounds cheesy, but it's a really important thing to keep in mind, especially if you're applying to very competitive fields.
As a follow-up to Lindsay's question and then everything you guys have just said, is kind of iterative use of the advising services something that I guess people do? Like, how often can you talk to them? If you're getting a lot of rejections, you're just seeing that you're not being successful, and you're like, clearly something needs to change. And then that's probably sounds like going to be a constant process for a little while. Are they okay with kind of that process-based advising, as opposed to just kind of more pinpoint spot services?
Sure. Yeah, we're really open to anything. I mean, I don't have a lot of people who do this, but I think you could meet with me every single day of the week if you wanted to, if I had the availability. And so for some students, it might just be like, yeah, this is a one and done appointment. We're gonna just talk about this one thing. For others, it might be, we're going to keep working on, this one process or, search over the course of months. So really, we want to, help you with however best you work. If that answered your question.
And I would also, because you all are in classes, well, if you're a current student, but with other Dragonfly students, and you can hover over names and icons and see where people work, and you're probably going to find some inspiring, I hope, people that you can also be reaching out to as part of the networking component of this. And then obviously, if you're alumni, same thing, you surely have connected with people through the program. So think about those peers as well as potential people you can like kick an email or message them and just be like, hey, do you have 20 minutes? I'm kind of stuck. I want to talk about, and I always thought your career sounded perfect. They might laugh when you say that, but anyway, yeah.
Any other questions? What conferences you recommend exploring? That would probably depend on your field, but any professional associations connected or well known in your field are going to be great ways to not only like learn more about the field, but to network with people in it. I think your faculty would probably be the experts on that. So, but we also have a resource called What Can I Do with This Major, which I realize sounds silly for grad students, but you can actually use that, and it'll have a list of different professional associations kind of associated with different majors. So that can sometimes be a way to explore some of those.
Yeah, I put in a bunch of acronyms there, but yeah, AZA is the American or the Association of Zoological Zoos and Aquariums. And actually Dragonfly will be there next week, their annual meeting in Columbus. But they also have a virtual you can join and see some of the presentations. I believe in October they make those available. NSTA is National Science Teachers Association, just because we have so many science teachers in the program, and AAEE is the Environmental Educators Association. But there's so many others, and a lot of times people don't realize there's a professional organization for whatever career. Like I mentioned, the National Interpreters Association, I believe, is out there. We have people who, like, are guides at like a historical museum or something, but there's a professional organization that helps you get your skills up on interpreting and sharing information. So at least being aware of that, because that is huge networking, and just seeing who's presenting and starting to note those things. It's great. Yeah, listservs too. So good, Danielle. The big one for me back whenever was ecolog.-l. I'll put it in the chat, but it's like an ecology listserv for, like, mostly academics in environmental fields, but it's huge, and people would be posting for, like, we need some field technicians to come out to this national park or whatever, and you just see opportunities through those. Yes, AMZAP, that is the Minority Zookeepers Association, is that right, Ami? I think so. Okay, great. Yeah, so, and actually it's kind of cool. They listed Dragonfly as like an affiliate organization, so we're somewhere on their pages now, which is great. But yeah, it's a great resource.
And I think it's just a reminder, use each other's resources too, because getting a lot of great suggestions here in the chat. Right, I realize we only have a few more minutes, but does anybody have any remaining questions before we finish up for today? All right, so hopefully we'll hear from you at some point, or hopefully you can connect with the Career Center in some way. We'd love to talk to you more about some of our resources. But yeah, thank you all for coming today.
Thank you, Danielle, and yeah, thanks everyone, and we'll be in touch. Have a great day.